Dear listeners and viewers, welcome to the new episode of Mohsin My Mentor. And since we are doing podcast on mentoring, this time we have requested one of the coach who serves in the coaching industry, coaching sector. Miss Khadija is here. We'd like to welcome Miss Khadija. Assalamu alaikum, Miss Khadija. How are you?
Hey, Walaikum Assalam, Mohsin. I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me here.
Great. It's our pleasure. And we are so grateful that you have spared some time for us. And we understand in coaching industry and your uh, committed life as well, it's too difficult to take some time out, but we really appreciate so kind of you.
Hey, most welcome. There's always time to share knowledge, and this is what we are all about and what our purpose is.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. So, ma'am, this term coaching, I'm just going to throw away questions as a layman because
Hmm.
people come to us, ask for different sort of career counseling, coaching, and there are some new terminologies for, let's say, people coming from different backgrounds. So this term coaching, how for your background as well, and how did it came across to you? What is your background in terms of the educational aspect, and how did you pursue your coaching journey?
Okay. So thank you for asking that, Mohsin. I was a graduate in psychology, and I even went to do my master's in psychology, but then I backed out because I thought that, psychology, especially counseling and all of that, involved listening to people's sad stories. And being a very sensitive person, I thought that, I might not be the one who goes down with the passage of time, and, they might not affect me negatively. Although I love helping people, and I realized the pattern that I was, more inclined to help people when they were talking about goals, when they were talking about future prospects. But when it came to the past and people who just could not get out of that mindset, it was difficult for me to have that conversation at times. So hence, that is where I left, parted with psychology. So then my journey has mostly been that of an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur for about 17 plus years. I've run product-based businesses, and now I run a service-based business. Um, so uh, entrepreneurship was always within me. That was another thing that, I came from a family of professionals. My father, brother, all were chartered accountants. But I always wanted to have a venture, something of my own, something where I had more autonomy. And this is what actually introduced me to coaching for the first time, because I kept looking out for mentors. And there was a platform called mentor.com at the time, based in the US, which connected, seasoned entrepreneurs and people with aspiring entrepreneurs. And I got some really good contacts from there, and connected with them. And even through LinkedIn, I still have mentors till this day. I appreciate the work that they do, but they're always sharing their experiences. And my search, somehow it did not satisfy me as an entrepreneur at that level for the guidance that I was looking for. And that actually made me search for something more, something which would uh, do a little more accountability, support, or hand holding in a way, maybe you can say, or partnership. And that's where I came across coaching. And my coaches at the time, the business coaches that I worked with, they were based in the US or they were based in the UK. coming from an affluent background, I could afford to have that session with them, like even though it costed me an arm and a leg. But that those were like one-off sessions. Even I could not sustain having a continued relationship with them because coaching was so expensive 2 decades back. Now it's more democratized, and people like myself, who run a coach training organization in Pakistan, we've made it much more reasonable. So coaches who are coming out can charge much lesser. But at the beginning, it was really expensive and it was really premium because it started off, as with the highlight being on celebrity sports coaches, and then it was transitioned into executive coaching in multinationals for their top talent. That's where coaching emerged from, till it came now to the common man also, and is slowly and gradually becoming more democratized. So at that time, because my experience was that I felt it was really expensive, uh, but it really helped me. I had been to a psychologist too. I had been to counselors too. As I said, I went to mentors as well. Um, they all helped in different ways, but the answers that I was looking for, I somehow found them through coaching, because coaching actually was more customized to me. Especially, ICF coaching is very client centered. It focuses on the fact that the client has is the master of their story, has all the solutions to their own problems. Sometimes they're just buried inside and they've not surfaced. A coach asks those powerful questions which helps all of that surface. And that is so true, because we know our ecosystem the best. We know our environment, our relationships, our everything around us. We know that the best, and only we can decide what is the best course of action for us to take. For a mentor, yes, they will share their experience, which is all valid, and you get to learn a lot from that, but it's not customized to you because their journey was different. Their perhaps family members, their environment, all of that was different. But coaching in that sense is different because it is customized to you. And this is where I actually developed this relationship, and the entrepreneur in me said that I need to sort of bring more of this to the world, and it shouldn't be so expensive. This is where I actually set about creating a coaching community a few years back. So I started doing LinkedIn lives with coaches around the world, and then I built a community of seasoned coaches who were in different parts of the world. What my aim was to bring, more reasonable coaching to people who couldn't afford. Then I found out about ICF, and they have a pro bono quota as well, where people have to complete those pro bono hours. And I thought, what a great opportunity for people who can't afford it to actually benefit from it, like I did. And this is how I came across coaching, and my journey began.
Right. Wonderful. What a comprehensive conclusion of what you have been through. And it really is interesting to know professionals like uh, yourself and others as well, as other mentors have mentioned as well. Uh, Ms. Khadija, when we talk about coaching, it's in like globally, it has been very well acknowledged. And as you have mentioned, like for sports person, for celebrities, it was known for that. Now things have changed. People have now adopted this. Like we have realized, even as an entrepreneur, I might need one. As let's say a teacher or a skillful person, I might need someone who can coach me, who can guide me. So, what kind of different categories of areas are there for coaches? And as you mentioned, ICF, how to get certified? Like they cover all sort of coaches. Like it could be mental wealth and well-being coach. It could be something with respect to the children, uh, child development, career counseling based coach. Variety of
Hmm.
categories are there. So, what's
Hmm.
your info on this?
Yes, what a great question, Mohsin. So I believe one thing very strong. Coaching is a skill, and that skill should be present in every industry. So doctors need to have coaches. Business people, as you said, entrepreneurs need to have coaches, engineers need to have coaches. And when you actually combine mentoring with coaching, it's a very powerful combination. For instance, if somebody is an engineer and they become a coach or they acquire coaching skills, their mentoring would be so much more effective because they're sharing their experience and they're bringing, they're making customizing it for that particular person also. So it becomes a really powerful combination, I feel. And that's why, ICF is the whole pathway, and the whole system is basically to teach you those coaching skills. Some people call it life coaching. I personally don't like that term because it has become very cliche, and I think it doesn't do this justice. Nobody comes to a life coach. People always are looking, for assistance with their own problems. Now maybe an engineer has a specific problem, and maybe somebody who was a coach plus mentor and has been in that industry would make a much better coach for that person. So just like, with sports coaches and even the executive coaches that we're talking about, usually that has been the pattern, that the skills, their existing skills, were combined with coaching skills. So I think coaching should be in every industry. But if somebody, for instance, like, they just want to not use their past skills, they were a graduate in, let's say IT, and they just want to set that aside and they just want to do coaching for coaching, and like, just for um, helping people, and um, which essentially is a way of life coaching, but they could then, further specify themselves, because when they're reaching out to a target audience, it's always better to call yourself a career coach, call yourself a wellness coach, because, people, that is part of the messaging, because then people know that, I need to come to this profession for this particular thing. If they say, I'm a life coach, people don't know what to come to you for, because they themselves are not clear about what is the thing that's bothering them. Specifically, they might know it broadly that yes, I don't sleep well, I'm at a burnout stage, and I perhaps need help with that part. But if you call yourself a burnout coach, or if you call yourself, you make your messaging really laser sharp, it's a better way to get to a target audience and use coaching skills for that specific problem. So, this is related to the niches, being more specific and, having a certain messaging. But coaching, the skill itself, what does it do? The skill itself is asking people powerful questions, listening to them very actively, because often what people come to you for is just a surface level story. There's always a story behind the story. And as a good coach, you tend to ponder, you tend to deep dive into what is that story that's bringing the client here today, what made it so important for them to pay for this session. So if somebody is investing their time with you, or somebody is investing their money for you, they want some answers, they want some support. There's something that they're looking for, and as coaches we have to understand what is at the root of that thing that they need support in.
Wonderful. Right. So, very comprehensively defined the importance of coaching, as you have mentioned. While going through the certification, is there a specific trail, like it is it differing from the category to category basis when we talk about, for example, ICF? So there could be different platform pathway for, let's say, well-being coach, or there could be different pathway for the career coach, or is it the same pattern? It just trains you for the coach-based things. Uh,
Yes, yes, please complete your
yeah, yeah,
question.
yeah. So I was just completing this. Is that because again there are some specialization of the skill set.
Hmm.
right? So definitely in coaching as well, it could vary. When you are dealing, for example, with teenagers, things are different.
Hmm.
Your listening appetite should be different. How you're going to make them understand should be different as compared to sitting in front of an entrepreneur who is a seasoned entrepreneur, maybe having uh, an age of about 40, 45. Making them understand could be different. So
Hmm.
your training
Yes.
should be different.
Yes, so what the ICF, so ICF has three levels. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail into that because I'm sure not everybody is interested. If anybody is interested, they can always, look it up on Google. They can connect with us at Grid Coaches, and we'd be happy to share more. But yes, it has different pathways like a level one, level two, and level three, broadly speaking. And all these levels, they're just training people how to become, coaches in the sense how to use coaching skills in their life. So once you learn coaching skills, so ICF has a competency called the competency 2, which is embodying the coaching mindset. So once you develop the mindset of a coach, it is very difficult to stop thinking like anybody else, like start thinking like anybody else, because it starts showing up in your interactions. You start thinking like a coach. You start talking in questions. You become more curious about people, and that mindset shows up everywhere. And personally, I've noticed that people who have been trained by us, they often say that, and even myself, when I got trained as a coach, I really felt that it improved my relationships. Because our training included, not judging people and always thinking that, what is it, what are the different options, what is the other person actually saying, and where is the gap between what they're saying and what are we understanding. So being more cognizant of that greatly improves your relationships, and especially for leaders in organizations, they're better able to pick, they have soft skills courses on emotional intelligence, but an emotional intelligence training tells you about emotional regulation or how it is, but coaching, it actually makes you implement all of that. So it's hands on, it's practical, it's actually making you use all of that in your daily interactions, and just see how all of that improves.
In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as my understanding is, this certification, as you mentioned, level one, two, and three, it comes with your experience. It is being crafted in this way. The more you are going to coach with your client, and once you're going to submit to ICF and or the recognized body, then you're going to get the levels, right? There are some number of
Yes. Absolutely, Mohsin. So for the level one, there are 100 minimum hours of coaching experience, and for level two, there are 500 hours, and the mastery level, it's 2,500 hours. So anybody who interacts with a credentialed coach, with an ICF credentialed coach, why do organizations prefer them now around the globe? Is because they know that this person is coming with a certain minimum experience. They're not just, taken a training and saying that, I am a coach, because coaching is largely an unregulated industry. So somebody who is coming with an ICF credential, it's a known fact that they have been through a rigorous process of training, of observations, feedback, for them to get to that level.
wonderful. Now, from the perspective of the person who is seeking coaching, okay, how can they search? For example, for psychologists, we know this is the clinic. We can go, we can check. For therapists, we have this. For medical profession, for any such other things, we know that this is the area. For coaching, it is still pretty new thing to adopt when we talk about Pakistan. People don't realize the importance, but now they are accepting that yes, there are people, those who can guide them, those who are being needed. So, how to search? For example, someone wants to come to you. How can they say that Miss Khadija is there, or maybe some specialized person is dealing with something else? Is there any platform?
Yes, so if people are looking for coaches, there are many platforms uh, where coaches are listed. Also, if they search, there is Upwork. There is people are also on the freelancing platforms like Fiverr. Coaches have set up their profiles. There's Coach Hub. There's a directory of coaches, know me, of coaches around the world. So there are many platforms out there where people can list themselves as coaches, and you can search them up. Also, if they go online on LinkedIn or Instagram and look for coaches, they will find many coaches. But then how do they know that it's an ICF coach? So people who are ICF credentialed or they are ICF certified, they would normally have it listed against their profile. If somebody is really particular, they can search them or verify through the ICF global support, whether this person is an ICF credential coach or not. So they can even, like, somebody wants to go all the way and check up on somebody, they can also do that. For people who want to become coaches, they can go on the ICF website. They have a education service search engine and just put the name of the organization and see if it's a verified organization. And if they actually go to that particular organization, they would have trainee coaches, qualified coaches that can provide them with quality coaching service. So that's another way. So there are different ways, either to look up on these platforms that already exist, or the social media as well, or look up coach training academies and look for collaboration with them. We have an ICF Pakistan and members page on LinkedIn, which is very authentic, and uh, they are very senior coaches that can be recommended through that page. So people can go to the LinkedIn page also.
Great. And from youngsters' point of view, when they ask that we have done, for example, we've just completed a higher education, we have this expertise, but we want to develop before that, is there any requirement that they should be completing their graduation and then going ahead for the certification? Is there any mandatory requirement, minimum qualification based thing?
For somebody to become a coach,
Yes.
so there isn't a minimum qualification, but generally, at least in our academy, we don't take coaches under the age of 25, because neuroscience also says that your prefrontal cortex, your brain is not fully developed till a certain particular age, although it continues to develop throughout your lifespan. But we, in general, have this age bar. I don't know about other academies. But yes, there isn't any particular minimum qualification that has been set out as such, because coaching is a skill. And like, our program, for instance, we teach the psychology aspect, we teach the neuroscience aspect. So we have people in our cohorts who have 20 to 30 years of corporate experience, and we have people who graduated a few years back. So it's a real mix, diversity. And sometimes at the beginning I used to discuss with my team that how do we manage this. There are people who are so experienced, and there are people who are so new when it comes to experience with people and organizations and all of that. So how do we manage that? But then we realized that when it comes to ICF, they were all coming with a blank slate, because that it was new, just as new to the person who had 30 years in the corporate as it was to somebody who had recently graduated or maybe never properly worked. Like, somebody who got married, went on a career break, and now they wanted to yeah, pursue their um, career. They had a degree. Some in South Asia, women especially, they get married, and then maybe when their children have uh, become a certain age, they want to actually do something with their lives. Some people, when they're close to retirement, they start searching for something like a fallback career, and they think of coaching. So there have been people on different trajectories who have come to us. And um, initially you might think how would they gel in, but it's quite beautiful to see that they bring a lot of diversity, because we're learning from the more experienced people and their richness of experiences, just as we are from the newer generation, because they are different. They have been born with technology in their hand, or been exposed to it at a much younger age, so we're equally learning from each other. And when it comes to the ICF, they are all, at the same level when they start.
Right. Wonderful. And one very important question, and we have seen in service industry, people are reluctant to pay. At least from where I belong to, I have noticed this, that until and unless there is something very terrible or there is some threat going on, usually payment for the services are people are very reluctant to pay for that. Is it the same in case of coaching as well?
So I have two things to say here, Mohsen. One is, I think people who think that other people are reluctant to pay are the ones who are reluctant to sell, because they perhaps need some mindset work when it comes to selling also. Because when you think that you are selling something people may buy, they may not buy, the chances are people will not buy, because you're not, you yourself do not give off that conviction. When you are so passionate about what you do, when you communicate the value to people, they will buy in. The first thing is your own belief in that service, your own, where are you, how convinced are you that what I'm giving is of value. So first you need to believe that, then the other person is going to be ready. And then there are, like, not two, maybe couple of things I will share with you, because I work with trainee coaches, and they all the time have this mindset barrier of selling services. So one is creating that shift, is making it service. You're serving them. You're spending your time that you could have spent with your family members, that you could have spent doing something else, but you're spending it with them. So it means something, like, you are taking that chunk of time of your life and you are reserving it for that person. So that should have a certain price point. Your time has value. So one is having that mindset as a service provider yourself. Second is, for people, like, you have to meet the client where they are at. If it's a student, they can't pay 5,000 per session. So if you want to really work with them, come to their level, make it 1,000, 2,000. If you're working with a corporate, yes, negotiate on. I always believe in meeting the client where they are at, because that's how you make, how you sell a service. Because um, demanding, unreasonable amounts, and knowing in your sane mind that this is not a fair price for that person, they're not going to pay because they simply can't. So that's one gap. Another gap that I see, one is the mindset bit, one is this bit, that asking for the wrong price from the wrong audience. And then when it comes to um, why people don't buy, confused people never buy. People buy when they are truly informed of the value that's being given them. So communicating the value is key. That this is, this is how your life is right now. This is how it will be. Not selling them any gimmicks, not selling them any false promises, because then they'll come to you for a time, they will never come back to you again, or they will never recommend you. So being very authentic with that, whatever, and maybe sometimes you find that this person is not a right fit for you. So just saying it to them. So I think honesty is very important, and we have all our lives equated sales with being have unethical tactics or manipulation, and that's why people are afraid to buy. they're afraid to buy basically because they feel that somebody is selling them something is does not have a pure intent. So share your pure intent, build that trust. And if and the key thing is that people pay for a coaching service when or any such service, which is like counseling or psychotherapy. They pay for it when the pain of being in their current circumstances is a lot. Like, people look for change when the current circumstances are really painful. Nobody starts seeking help if they're all satisfied in their life. So what is that pain that you are catering to? So that again is in your messaging. So um, I think keeping honesty, service, all of that in mind, and understanding your own barriers too, if you can cater to all of these, I don't see any reason why coaching won't sell.
Great. What a wonderful psychology behind, in fact, service-based selling. It's not just with respect to coaching, but
Yes.
yeah, with respect to everything. This is the benefit of having a coach. I got advantage of this podcast that I got your advice that how you are selling is very important. You be confident,
Hmm.
and this is what your role is, right? So those
Yes.
who are listening and viewing this podcast, you can see what kind of importance we have when we have someone as a coach guiding you, providing you facilitation, and you all have skill set. It's not that we as a human being don't have any specialty. We do have some special skill set, but we need someone who can identify your strengths, guide you, lead you to the better understanding. There are different situations in life, and we have to deal with that. So coaches are there, and again, Hadi, thanks a lot for your time. The way you guys, like I see from other coaches, I know a few of them as well. I have met with them. And this is how I came across with Miss Khadija as well, and I requested for her time, precious time, because she must be doing some sort of work in terms of coaching with one of her, few of her clients as well. Any concluding remark or any such thing? Although the last one was very powerful point which you have mentioned for the service sector people. Or anything which you would like to add to conclude the session?
So I just have one thing to say, though it might sound cliche, but I will still say it, is that we can do anything that we want to, anything at all. Uh, all these limiting beliefs, it might sound idealistic, but I have actually achieved that in my life, and I would not have if I wouldn't have had the support of coaching. And this is what makes me sell coaching so passionately, is because I've first hand experienced that support, of the because every time a challenge comes in life, we go into freeze mode, we stop acting, we stop becoming proactive, we get bogged down in our atmosphere, people's comments, none of it helps. So what do you need? You need a safe, non-judgmental space where somebody is going to challenge you and all those thoughts which limit you. So I feel that you should never play small. We were not born to play small. It's children, when they are born, they explore, they experiment, they do everything. They think the world is their oyster, and we should have that same kind of belief in ourselves. It's the environmental conditioning that says to us that you can't do this, because we start telling children that this can't be done, the mistakes can't be made, what have you done. That's all your conditioning. So coaching will help you let go of that conditioning and be who you are truly meant to be. So it's an investment worth making.
Great, wonderful investment worth making. Coaching sector, coaching industry. Again, thanks, Khadija, for your time. And if someone have any question, so you guys can approach. You can find her on LinkedIn as well. She's very vibrant on social media platforms, and we learn a lot from people. This is the benefit of social media. People at times do argue that
Absolutely.
it's at times wasting time. So, but we have seen that there are so many professionals, those who are coming across, and they are posting so many valuable things out of their precious time. We all are learning from those areas which are not pertaining directly to our field, but we are learning from that. So really appreciate that. Thanks a lot for being one of the mentor, spending your time
Thank
for
you.
us, and stay blessed. All of those who are listening to us, subscribe to our channel and send your comments and remarks so that we could line up our more guests and mentors accordingly. Thanks a lot for listening. Stay blessed. For the next time, bye for now.